I want to cover the tokenization of all asset classes really is because I feel like this could be the thing that unlocks liquidity in all the illiquid assets. It can also could potentially stimulate the UK economy, which at the moment looks like it's becoming a bit of a challenge, right? Now, for anyone that's been listening to my podcast since 2020, you already know how strongly I've felt about this for many years. But if we start with real estate, one, it's a valuable asset class, but it is traditionally illiquid and quite difficult to divide. And the market has pretty much come to a standstill recently, especially in the UK. Labour's done a great job of making sure that's the case. But if looking at tokenization, which pretty much is just converting property ownership into digital tokens, ideally on a blockchain, this then allows fractional ownership, which also allows investors to buy and sell small portions of assets. So that itself injects, quite a lot of liquidity into a illiquid market, and then helps a much faster circulation of money. So, property owners can then also release trapped equity without selling like the entire asset. It then also allows smaller investors to access more premium assets, also diversify their portfolio and pretty much globally. They get access to assets they probably wouldn't have been able to access previously. So, for example, let's say there was a 10 million pounds building in the UK, and that could be divided into, say, 1 million tokens at £10 each. So this now allows local and also international investors to pretty much invest and participate into that asset, which I think that's an absolute game changer. So talking about being globally diversified, especially in the digital world we live in now, you'll be able to own different pieces of real estate and businesses and assets in different parts of the world without actually physically going through the traditional way of having to invest in these assets. So I do think this is going to happen across everything, all businesses, asset classes, everything. I think, the good thing is, I think, it also allows, emerging economies to be able to attract even foreign micro investment, and super transparently as well. If we look at these, through token platforms. So I think in general, it's really going to help. Yes, it does cause a bit of a monopoly and quite a big consolidation play for the people with large amounts of capital, but that's happening anyway. But what it does do, it does increase aggregate demand, and then it can also stimulate wealth creation for everyone. That's the thing why we all think the big benefit comes from, because if you look at what's happening in, say, fintech right now, it creates a lot of momentum in fintech, momentum in legal compliance. It opens up the doors for smart contracts, which should overall make things a lot more efficient and faster, which in my opinion is very much needed. Imagine auto compliance, right? So AML, KYC, instant verification of ownership. Just imagine that, right? Low transaction costs, less friction, everyone's happy. But look, on the flip side, there is some risks and downsides. Of course, there always is. We have to look at it on both sides. It definitely poses some cybersecurity risk, and maybe there's going to be some issues with some of the cross-border compliance. Maybe that's not as straightforward. But look, I think that if it's balanced correctly, it should really be the catalyst for a sustainable economic stimulation. I think that's the right words, or the best way to put it. But yeah, look, guys, tokenization is massive. So tell me what you guys think. Give us an email, live@thesmbshow.com. Give us a comment on YouTube or X. But look, like I said, soon you're going to be able to build a global diversified portfolio. Think about it, right? Some of the assets we probably wouldn't normally be able to access. A retail investor could, maybe have a 0.1% stake in a London office building, or maybe, I don't know, a piece of the Burj Khalifa. It literally completely will, I can't say the word, democratize wealth. It will democratize wealth finally, which I think that, is something that is having access to asset classes and certain assets around the world has pretty much been almost impossible to date. So I think this is going to be an absolute game changer. And, it's already been happening in the background anyway. It's not so much, I would say, on the retail side, but when you do look at BlackRock, JP Morgan, they've been exploring, tokenized fund structures for some time now, especially with real estate portfolios. So no, it's been happening in real estate. It already is. Dubai, Singapore, and actually back in, I think, 2021, I did a bit of a deep dive into a company called Realty, and they still seem to be very, very active. They was, I wouldn't say first mover advantage, but they definitely was one of the first. Plus you have, Hamilton Lane, which is a global PE fund. I think they manage over about $800 billion. They've already started to tokenize parts of their funds to allow investment from smaller investors as well. It's happening across all assets: art, gold, silver, carbon credits, a big one. I do think we're going to see a lot of changes in finance in general over the next 5 years. Anyway, so give me a shout, give us a comment on what your thoughts are on the tokenization of pretty much everything.